In the boardroom of the Corinthian-Casuals football club, there are three pennants that owe everything to a very special group of men. The team of 1910. For it was the awe-inspiring and exciting play of this talented Corinthian side, whilst on tour to Brazil, that resulted in a team be formed in their image. A team that would become the world champions, the greatest club in South America, sports club Corinthians Paulista. And it's been a unique bond that's lasted ever since, with the fans of both clubs holding each other close to their hearts, a connection rare in football, and one that's even been celebrated occasionally, with contests between the two. Most famously, there was the reunion in 1988, that featured such luminaries as Socrates and Rivellino. And then again, more recently in 2001, the Casuals once more travelled to Sao Paulo. But this whole story began with that legendary Corinthian team of 1910. The tragic story of what happened to that team is widely unknown, but on the same wall in the Casuals boardroom, a First World War memorial tells the sad tale of a team ripped apart by war and a series of early deaths. They were footballing legends, they'd inspired a nation, and they died as war heroes. This is their story. Cuthbert Brisley was the standout Corinthian player at the time of the war being declared. By many, he was even considered to be the best centre-forward in the whole of Europe, with a Corinthian record that boasted 64 goals from 86 games. A veteran of several Corinthian tours, having made his debut in South Africa in 1907, where he scored against the national side, as he did against the first ever Brazilian side as well, in a 5-2 victory in 1910, when the war broke out, Brisley joined the RAF and trained as a pilot. On the 30th of July, 1918, the now Major Brisley tragically died in a training accident. Having taken off on a test flight, he attempted a dangerous stunt at 6,000 feet when his plane malfunctioned. Plummeting to the ground, it is said that Brisley was seen to fall from the plane and he was found dead some distance from the wreckage. He was buried where he had been stationed, in Market Drayton, a lost, great talent, tragically dead just months before the end of the war, aged 32. A defender of great poise, John Charles Dodsworth Tetley was not only on the 1910 tour, but also on the visit to Brazil of 1914 that was cut short by the declaration of war. A signed-up member of the reserve army, the instant he arrived in Brazil, Tetley raced home on the first ship. Before heading to battle, however, as this team sheet will reveal, he was able to play for the Corinthians one final time, for the Corinthians under arms side in a charity game against an army team. A match notable also for the fact that another great Corinthian, Charles Rayford Brown, was the referee. One of the greatest ever Corinthian players, Rayford Brown is also credited with having coined the word soccer whilst at Oxford University. Eventually taking the rank of lieutenant in the 3rd Grenadier Guards, Tetley's fate awaited him at the 3rd Battle of Ypres, when, as the Allies attempted to advance to capture the Passchendaele Ridge at the Battle of Pau Capelle, on a day when many believed the awful weather conditions should have halted any plans to advance, with the ground becoming a swamp, J.C. Tetley was killed in action on October the 9th, 1917. For a man who'd experienced so much, sad is it that when his body was found, his only belongings listed were a damaged watch and cigarette case. For Frank Noel Tough, the man who played in defence for the 1910 tour at number 6, his war was to be a short one. A second lieutenant in the Royal East Kent Mounted Rifles, he was only commissioned to the front line in June 1915, where he was wounded at the battle in Gallipoli at Suvla Bay on the 23rd of October. He eventually passed away from his injuries in the afternoon of November the 5th, 1915, at the Cotton Air Hospital in Malta. So a short war indeed for the man who played just 24 times for the Corinthians, and one overseen by Lieutenant General Sir Frederick Stopford, whose performance in command of the doomed amphibious landing is deemed to be one of the most incompetent feats of generalship of the entire First World War. Lancelot Andries Vidal was not only part of the team in 1910, but he also returned to Brazil as part of the 1913 side as well. A forward, Vidal made his name in 1910 by scoring 4 goals in the opening match for 10-1 victory against Fluminense in Rio. A second lieutenant and survivor of the bloody battle at Ypres, Vidal became a machine gun officer in August 1915 and found himself with his Essex regiment at the Battle of Loos. Coincidentally, a battle with 2 associated football images attached to it. It was the first time British forces had used poison gas, and a Scottish regiment reportedly dribbled a football during an offensive across no man's land towards the German troops. Fatally, on the morning of September 25, 1915, Lancelot Vidal was killed by a bombshell whilst himself too advancing. He was leading a machine gun section over the parapet, and it was reported he ran for 20 yards and then was hit by a shell. He died instantly. Reginald Rogers only ever played for Corinthian during the 1910 tour to Brazil. A goalkeeper, his 6 matches couldn't have been more significant, and he even had the dubious honour of being scored against in the famous 8-2 victory of the Sao Paulo Athletic Club by none other than the Corinthian and father of football in Brazil, the legendary Charles Miller himself. A lieutenant in the Rifle Brigade, Rogers found himself at the Battle of the Somme in 1916, in Devil's Wood, as it became known, the bloodiest battle hell. The decimated wood has thankfully since recovered, with just one original tree still standing from the battle. Rogers at his fort was killed by a sniper, and he now lies in what is the 3rd largest British cemetery on the Somme, amid the 5,523 graves. Of all the other players who weren't in Brazil in 1910, yet died in battle, a special mention must be made to Thomas Rowlandson. Surely one of the great characters of his era, Rowlandson made his Corinthian debut in 1903, and he kept goal no less than 150 times until the summer of 1910, a career that saw him feature in many of the Corinthians' most memorable victories, including the 12-0 win over Belgium, the 7-1 win over Aston Villa, the 18-0 win over New York City, and the 2-1 win over Holland. It was in this period that Rowlandson also gained notoriety for being the goalkeeper who famously stood aside for a penalty in South Africa in 1907, believing intentional foul play not to exist. Allowing the other team to score so freely is still seen to be the ultimate display of the Corinthian ethos. A truly courageous and patriotic man, Rowlandson had handed his house to the Red Cross Hospital when war was declared. After surviving the Battle of Ypres in 1915, he was promoted to captain. Sadly though, he met the same fate on the same day as his replacement in goal in 1910, Reginald Rogers. Thomas Rowlandson died at the Battle of the Somme on September 15, 1916. A fellow officer wrote of his death, "I have always thought him the finest type of Englishman I have ever known, and his death was just as fine as his life. He died where of all places I think he would have chosen, on the German parapet, at the head of his men." Thomas Rowlandson was awarded the Military Cross in October 1916. He must surely be remembered as one of the greatest characters the Corinthian family has ever seen. And so the team of 1910, never could they have imagined the influence they were going to have, and never should they be forgotten.